Hey everybody, it's Jake Trent back here again with another video. And what I wanted to talk about today, or do today I guess you could say, is hand drill. So I got my first hand drill ember in April of this year. So that was 5-6 months ago. And after I got it, blew it into flame, put it down, didn't touch it for the rest of the summer. The reason why you don't see a whole lot of people mess with hand drill in the eastern woodlands for the most part is because we don't really have the right materials here. Now out west and also in Texas and all those places where it's really hot and dry and the humidity isn't quite up there. Now in Texas is a different story, but the humidity isn't quite up there. It's a lot easier to get a hand drill ember in those conditions, and also they have the right woods for it. Here in Ohio, or at least on my property, I have zero yucca, which is really preferable for hand drill. So whenever I got my first hand drill, I basically cut 2 yucca stalks in a Texas Roadhouse parking lot and was like, okay, well, this is going to have to do. And you know, the spindle was just wobbly and it wasn't quite big enough as far as diameter goes. The board sucked. So it wasn't really quite the right material. So I picked up a hand drill set here. We just got it rolled up into a big piece of material. So I picked a hand drill set up here from Philip Liebel from Primitive Wilderness Survival, I think is the name of his company. And this is a yucca hand drill set. Now, again, I don't have any yucca on my property. I don't even have any materials that I could really make a viable hand drill set out of. I don't have any white pine on my property either. So for me, finding hand drill material is very difficult, unless I go cut it in a parking lot somewhere. But so I picked up one of these sets and I've been playing around with it, and I have so far 5 attempts on it and 5 embers. And this is, again, yucca. So really the whole reason for me making this video is to kind of show you guys a little bit of the learning process that I've been going through when it comes to hand drill. I've done hundreds of bow drill fires, and it got to the point to where a bow drill was getting boring for me. It's really why I started on hand drill. But from my observations so far, hand drill is definitely a lot more simple than bow drill. But the reason, like I said, a lot of people don't do hand drill in the eastern woodlands is because, number one, they may not have the materials. Number two, the humidity is so freaking high. And number three, the woods are a lot denser in the eastern woodlands than they are, say, out west where they have yucca and nice soft stuff like that. So, which then again, in turn, goes to material selection. So being able to pick up a full yucca set of using the right materials and actually get an ember in a woodland environment, for me, is really sweet. Because again, like I said, I just don't have the materials. The reason why more people in the eastern woodlands float to a bow drill or a pump drill is because it has a mechanical advantage, right? It gives you that mechanical advantage to be able to go through that harder wood versus just using your hands and the downward pressure from your lats. So that's why a lot of people in the eastern woodlands use bow drill. Is it a more complicated process? Yes, it is, in my opinion, because you have a lot more moving parts. But that's really about it. Bow drill is a little bit more complex, obviously, than hand drill, because hand drill, you have 2 components. Bow drill, you have 4 components or 5 components. So I'm going to move the camera around. We're going to pop out an ember with this thing. I do not have any tinder material. It rained early this morning. It may not look like it because everything's pretty well dry, but I did collect some tulip poplar bark and it was still really damp. One thing with this hand drill is that where it pops out such a small ember, your bird's nest or tinder bundle has to be damn near perfect. With a bow drill ember, you could pop out a good size ember that's about the size of the end of a cigar, and you can be a little bit more lax with your bird's nest than you can be with a hand drill ember. It's always good practice to get in the habit of making your bird's nest or your tinder bundle as good as it can possibly be. That way you don't have to worry about blowing it into flame once you do get that ember. Okay, so looking at this hand drill set, you can see I have 2 notches in it. I have the first notch, I was able to get 3 embers out of this one. The second one, I was able to get 2 embers out of. So you could see how skinny this board is. Now, it's about the thickness of my index finger, just like a bow drill board. And then the spindle is about 1.5 feet long or so, and about the diameter of my pinky. It has a pithy inside. Again, this is a yucca material. Now if I do the fingerprint test, you can see my fingerprint definitely imprints into that board. So, a couple of things that I've learned with this so far. Whenever you taper your spindle, you really need to taper this in really hard and make it as round as you possibly can, because if you don't do that, it'll start to split out on you. That's a lesson that I learned. Also, you can see on this spindle how I have the material shaved off about an inch up from the bottom. The reason for that is whenever you start to go drill into your hole, and as you get deeper and deeper and the spindle gets smaller and smaller, this bark, I guess you could say, will basically shed off of the spindle itself and basically have like a flap on there. That's something you want to avoid because it will take the top of your ember off if you're trying to do a bow drill, or a hand drill, sorry. So that's another thing that I learned, hard lesson on, was just doing that small little simple trick, and it alleviates that problem. So you can see how small your V-notch is on this board. I mean, it's the size of the end of my pinky. So you're working with a really small ember. That's why your tinder material has to be on point. But on a bow drill set, I normally taper this bottom part off to allow more airflow through the bottom whenever I am going for an ember. The reason why you taper that back side off is to allow more oxygen in it, into the coal, to help get a coal. But I learned with this that that's really unnecessary because it is such a small ember and it is such a small notch. So I quit doing that. You can see the spindle fits in there just perfect. And just like a bow drill, I just make a small divot, drill into it with the hand drill, and then make my notch. And you can see what this will do to your hands. I got a pretty good size blister right there. I'm probably getting ready to rub that piece of skin off whenever I go for the ember. But it will absolutely tear up your hands if you are not used to this. So just be cautious with that. This can cause an open wound while you're in the woods, which is not something you really want. So if that does happen, just cover it up with something. Alrighty, so let's talk a little bit about form that I have found works for me with this hand drill set. Now, there are people out there who can do hand drill with their eyes closed because it's what they do. It'd be like someone here doing bow drill versus someone out west doing hand drill. So there are a few different methods with this hand drill that you can go with. Number one is basically putting your foot on top of this board and then moving your knee out of the way and leaning over the top of the board and going down. I personally don't like to do that. I like to actually sit and do it because I feel like I can get a little bit more downward pressure whenever I do that. Now there are a couple different methods whenever you go to use the spindle. You could do the itsy bitsy spider motion, right? You can almost do what they call floating. I'm not that good at it yet because, again, I'm not an expert in this. This is just what I have found really works best for me and helped me out, and tips from other people, and it may help someone else out. So whenever I'm doing this, I'm one of those guys where I just want to get it done and be done with it. So what I do is I always kind of angle my hands down a little bit like this, because I feel like I can get that downward force that I need, or downward pressure that I need whenever I do that. If I do them straight, then it's almost like the spindle, it feels like it's just like sliding straight through my hands. And I'm not a big fan of that. I like to be able to put a little bit more downward force to force that ember out of there. So what I will normally do is I will put my foot on the board just like this, move my knee out of the way, and then just start going at it. And whenever you are going for this ember, one thing that really helped me out is a tip from Jonathan Burton, or the Bearded Burton. You guys go check him out on Instagram and YouTube. But a tip he gave me was, don't use your arms whenever you are doing this. If you use your arm muscles and you're pressing with your arms, you're going to blow your arms out. You want to try to use your lats. So you want to try to isolate that and use your lats to drill down into it to get that force. Once I figured exactly how to do that, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. After that, it was just like, okay, this makes things a whole lot easier. My first ember, it took me 3 hours to get an ember. And Burton and I were messaging back and forth, and he was giving me different tips, and that was one that really stuck out on my head. Was after I tried that, it really helped me out, and I ended up getting my ember. But my arms were just so blown out, they felt like noodles. So don't use your arms. Try to get your pressure from your lats, and use your lats to actually do it. Now, if you've never really worked out before, or you don't go to the gym much, you may not know how to isolate that muscle like that, which is fine. It just takes practice. So I'm going to move the camera in here close. We'll go ahead and pop out an ember with this. I don't spin on my hands just because I don't like to spin on my freaking hands. But what I'm going to do is do a pass or two that's just kind of going to warm the set. And that's what I'm really going to focus on for the first couple of passes, is just getting this set warmed up. So I'm going to go all the way back like that, all the way forward. And I'm going to angle my hands down because that's the way I like to do it. Some people angle them up, some people go straight. I like angling them down. I do go down the spindle quicker, but I feel like I can get more force that way. My hands are still swollen from doing this yesterday. You just got to push through the pain a little bit. All right, let's do this. Kind of having to use the palms of my hand because the rest of my hands are all blistered up from doing this. So I can see the dust that I'm putting out. There's a nice coffee ground color, which is what they're looking for. Just like that, you have a small hand drill ember. Right there. So you can see how small that ember is. And again, I had to kind of use the palms of my hand like this instead of going the full length of my hand because of that blister right there. That's a good size one. So yeah. Now I will say that ember did take me a little bit longer than it normally does, and the reason is because my hands are just so sore and ate up. Another tip that Jonathan Burton gave me was to put lotion on my hands at night, but I'll also ice them after I'm done with something like this, or I'm back at the house or whatever. Ice your hands to keep them from bruising so much, because they will bruise. You can see the aftermath, and that is a nice size blister right there. That's from yesterday. And my hands are just ate up. They hurt pretty good. So while I was using the spindle, instead of going the full length like I'm normally able to, I had to basically use everything from here back because it hurt so much. Now there's a few times whenever I went ahead and bared down on it and really got it, but just using it from there back, I was having to short stroke it on the way down, and I don't like to do that. But if you guys watched my short video that I put up the other day, I put it on Instagram, and then I think I posted on YouTube. It's a straight up and down video. It's not like a landscape style. If you watch that video, I got an ember to flame in about 1 minute and 57 seconds. I think that's what it was. So this right here, does it expend as much energy as a bow drill? Maybe yes, maybe no. Just kind of depends on what shape you're in. I can do bow drill no problem. The only reason this wore me out so much today is because I was having to use a different part of my hand that I did not like using, and it took me longer to get the ember. As compared to yesterday, whenever I was able to go the full length of my hands and really pump that ember out. I'm going to end this video by saying this. Friction fire is not easy, and it never will be. For someone who's never even tried friction fire, the success rate of them making a set and getting an ember, getting a fire going with that ember is about 30%. You know, I get a lot of questions. So I get questions all the time from people asking me, how do they get better with bow drill? How do they get better with pump drill or whatever? And the only answer you can give them is keep doing it. Just remember that if you are getting frustrated with friction fire and you see, you know, a video like this or somebody else's, they just pump out an ember really easily. You have to remember, what is that person's experience versus your experience whenever you are doing it. So don't get mad, just keep trying. Everybody has their own little way of doing friction fire. What I tell someone to do for bow drill something may not work for them in that process, and they may have to change it up a little bit to get it to work for them. That's what's great about learning the outdoors, is that everybody has their own little techniques that you can learn from and pick up from and maybe add to your own arsenal to use. Again, the reason I'm making this video was to kind of show you guys my thought process behind it and my experience with it so far as a learner through this process, because I'm by no means an expert in hand drill. But I wanted to share just a few little tips that I picked up that work for myself and some tips from other people that may help someone else out who is struggling with hand drill. So hopefully this video helps somebody out. Hopefully somebody learned from it. If you like any of the gear I use in my videos, you can visit the links down below. One of them is to my Campcraft Outfitters affiliate link. The other one is to my website, buckeyebushcraft.com, where we also offer training, private training, all that good stuff. So if you guys are interested in something like that, go check out those links below. I'm Jake Trent with Buckeye Bushcraft. I appreciate you guys joining me for this video. I'll see you in the next one.